investigation, an Iranian group created the perfect messenger to push for
اعلام کرد که وزارت خارجه آمریکا کمک مالی خود به یک پروژه اینترنتی ضد ایرانی را قطع
carefully prepared propaganda, fake social media accounts, making all these allegations in order to create fake stories.
Hello, I'm Richard Gisbert, and you're at The Listening Post. Here are some of the media stories that we're covering this week. Now you read him, now you don't. Iran, disinformation, and the curious case of Heshmat Alavi. Hong Kong, and why journalists are among those who fear a proposed new law that could land them in a Chinese prison. The YouTubers chronicling and powering the protests in Algeria. Plus, the Me Too movement and the voices that have gone unheard. We begin with Iran and two stories over the past 10 days that show that when it comes to the coverage of the Islamic Republic, all is not as it seems. First, the online opinion writer who wasn't. Heshmat Alavi was once cited by the White House as a credible commentator on Iran. But he'd have far more credibility if he actually existed. It turns out he's a fictional persona reportedly created by the MEK, Mujahedin-e-Khalq, a shadowy group opposed to the Iranian government and supported by Washington. Then there's the Iran Disinformation Project, funded entirely by the American taxpayer, ostensibly to counter Iranian propaganda. It trolls and sometimes smears Iranian-American commentators and journalists online. The government in Tehran is no innocent player in all this. It also tries to engineer what gets said and read online. As the Trump administration continues with its hawkish talk on Iran, dissecting this debate and figuring out who's driving it is proving more complicated by the day. Our starting point this week is Washington, D.C. Heshmat Alavi, a self-described human rights and political activist with 30,000 followers on Twitter, a critic of the Iranian government, advocating regime change, and a remarkably prolific writer, widely published. His columns appeared on the websites of the American business magazine Forbes, as well as The Hill, The Federalist, and The Daily Caller, on the Saudi-owned Al Arabiya, on the Voice of America's Persian website, until the American news outlet The Intercept published this story, saying that Heshmat Alavi did not even exist, that he was a creation of the MEK, an Iranian opposition group schooled in the black arts of propaganda, and that all the news outlets that had published Alavi, in Forbes's case 61 times, had been gamed.
What was shocking was that Forbes magazine, Daily Caller, Federalist, The Hill published a person who did not exist. We're talking about someone who they thought existed, but never bothered to verify in any way, shape, or form. And I don't think you would ever see that happening on any other issue. I think this is an Iran-specific thing in which the standards and the bar in the US media, particularly on the right, is essentially non-existent.
And his content wasn't very subtle. If you go back and see the record of what was published under Heshmat Alavi, you can see where he's coming from. But the fact that nobody realized just shows a lack of responsibility on the part of the media. And he really utilized that. He had a track record of published articles that then made his audience on Twitter believe that he's a real person and he's a credible and published author.
Forbes failed on so many levels. If one journalist could discover that Heshmat Alavi was a fictitious character, an entire organization as well-funded as Forbes could have. I had challenged Heshmat several times on the misinformation that he was propagating online, and Heshmat never responded. So naturally, I attributed that to a journalist with a gigantic ego or someone who is very busy, but now we know.
The group that fooled those media outlets, the MEK, should have been well known to all of them. The U.S. considered it a terror organization until 2012, and since that classification was dropped, the MEK has cozied up to American officials who share its hawkish views on Iran, One of them, President Trump's national security advisor, John Bolton, spoke at the group's annual conference in 2017.
There is a viable opposition to the rule of the Ayatollahs, and that opposition is centered in this room today.
The MEK runs a sizable troll farm in Albania, where its operatives target online voices who express support for the Iranian government. The Iran Disinformation Project does a lot of that too, only it's based in Washington and is paid for by American taxpayers. Its brief is to counter disinformation from Iran, but the project has gone much further than that. Among the people it trolls, Iranian-American journalists and NGO workers like Tara Saperifar of Human Rights Watch. She landed in Iran Disinfo's crosshairs after sending this tweet, seeking information from Iranians on how economic sanctions are affecting the availability of medicine there.
It was a purely research-based tweet, and it was in Persian. It was intended towards the Iranian audience to help me find some evidence that I could use for my research. They retweeted my tweet and said something along the line of, despite the fact that hundreds of protesters have been killed since 2018, Human Rights Watch researcher is working hard to prove Iran's right.
Any moderate or nuanced view or reporting of Iran has been triggering their attacks. I had been called a mouthpiece, a lobbyist for the regime. Other people had been called apologists or lobbyists for simply voicing their criticism against President Trump's policies or a nuanced view of what is going on inside Iran that wasn't seen as hardline enough by the Iran Disinfo group.
Here you have an entity that was supposed to fight Iranian propaganda online. Instead, it was actually spending almost all of its time attacking critics of the Trump administration's Iran policy. To make it worse, the fund that came from the State Department was actually designed to fight ISIS propaganda and Russian interference in the United States. Instead, the Trump administration diverted that money to fight critics of Trump's Iran policy.
Including Jason Rezaian, a Washington Post writer. Iran Disinfo went after him, which was ironic because just 3 years ago, the same State Department that funds the project was lobbying to free Rezaian from prison in Iran. The authorities there are notorious for their treatment of journalists. This past week, they revoked the credentials of the New York Times' bureau chief there without explanation. Tehran also invests in its own online disinformation campaigns, setting up fake news websites, generating spurious articles, and creating online personas. That was what Iran Disinfo was created to fight against before it turned to trolling critics and lobbying for regime change. And it's just one of the many players in Washington lobbying on one side of this story or the other. Some Iranians accuse the DC-based National Iranian-American Council, NIAC, of in fact being the unofficial lobbying arm of the Iranian reformist movement.
The MEK pushes their own political agenda by creating fictitious characters such as Heshmat Alavi, and NIAC brands people who do not agree with them as warmongers. Iran Disinfo engages in similar tactics. So what I'm trying to say is everybody is engaging in those tactics. Iran has multiple diverse voices, and for certain groups with more financial resources to be able to monopolize this space is doing them disservice.
Certain positions are much more marginal, and certain viewpoints are much more mainstream. And the viewpoints that NIAC has represented, holding Iran responsible for its human rights violation, but at the same time engaging in dialogue rather than coercion and war, is vastly supported by the Iranian-American community. If there are any campaigns by anyone to manipulate the debate, manipulate social media, then obviously that should be shut down.
Iran Disinfo has avoided being shut down so far, but it has taken a big hit over its rogue behavior.
Yes, so the funding does remain suspended for this entity, and there's a review process that's ongoing right now.
Together, the Iran Disinformation Project and the MEK's Heshmat Alavi deception provide lessons for anyone, news outlets included, dealing with the Iran story. With hawks in the Trump White House flexing American muscle and placing maximum pressure on Iran.
Iran has been a very dangerous player, very bad player. They're a nation of terror, and we won't put up with it.
The Times call for extreme caution in separating fact from fiction, legitimate voices from paid trolls, and credible commentators from virtual ones.
For analysts, reporters, policymakers, anyone who is trying to make sense of Iran these days, if their only point of reference is what's happening on social media, they should think twice before publishing it as, this is how Iranians feel about these things. One thing that these two seemingly unrelated stories that have come out at the same time prove is that this space is highly manipulated, and it's far from a reflection of Iranian public opinion.
We're discussing other media stories that are on our radar this week with one of our producers, Johanna Hoos. Joe, hundreds of thousands of protesters on the streets of Hong Kong this week demanding that the government scrap this proposed new extradition law. Journalists were among those protesters. Why is that?
Well, primarily because of fears among press freedom advocates that this new bill, which would allow the extradition of alleged criminals from the semi-autonomous city of Hong Kong to mainland China, will be used by Beijing as a way to target political enemies and critics, including journalists and their sources. Once in China, they say those extradited would be at the mercy of an opaque justice system and at risk of serious human rights abuses. Now, according to Reporters Without Borders, China currently holds at least 111 journalists under life-threatening conditions. In an open letter sent to Carrie Lam, who is Hong Kong's head of government, 23 human rights organizations, including the Committee to Protect Journalists and PEN Hong Kong, urged the government to scrap the law.
And what about news outlets on the Chinese mainland? How have they been covering this story?
Well, they've either completely ignored the protest. China's state broadcaster, for example, did not mention them at all, or they are parroting the Communist Party's line on this, in some cases blaming the unrest on foreign interference and collusion with the West. The Chinese edition of the Global Times was one example of that, saying, quote, "Some international forces have significantly strengthened their interaction with the Hong Kong opposition in recent months." The English-language paper China Daily also played down the story. It said that more than 800,000 people had backed the new law in an online petition, countering a protest by about 240,000 people, which clearly is a very conservative estimate of the numbers out on the street. Online, searches for news on the demonstrations on China's Twitter-like Weibo or the messaging app WeChat yielded no results at all, nothing. And while no such censorship currently exists in Hong Kong, activists are warning that those liberties are slowly being eroded as Beijing moves to tighten its grip on the city.
Okay, thanks, Joe. For 4 months now, Algerians have been hitting the streets, demanding political change. While they've succeeded in toppling the country's longtime president, Abdelaziz Bouteflika, they aren't done. They're demanding a comprehensive dismantling of the ruling elite. Their rallying cry, they must all go. Many Algerians are far too politically aware to trust the state-owned news media, which initially underplayed the protest story and continues to spin it. Long before the demonstrations began, a generation of YouTubers, people like Raja Mazian and Anes Tina, emerged as unofficial spokespeople for Algerian youth. Mazian is a musician now living in exile in Prague. Anes Tina is a comedian still posting material from his home in the Algerian capital. Both get clicks in the multi-millions. We spoke with the two of them about the grievances they articulate, the political and social changes they advocate in the videos that they've produced that are now part of the soundtrack of the Algerian Revolution.
quand j'ai fait la chanson la première Allo le système ما كان عندي حتى تخمام غير je veux juste m'exprimer parce que على بالكم راني في الغربة j'étais obligée نتغرب على بلادي دونك الناس تخرج كان ماذا بيا لو كان نقدر ندخل بلادي ونمانيفيستي مع ولاد بلادي ونعيط حتى نتبحبح و فوالا فوالا ما درتش حاجه كي سورتي دو لوردينير جي جوست بارتيسيبي مع ولاد بلادي فوالا
يا رئيس انا على البليس راهي تعيط مسيو لو بريزيدون نو يو كانت
مباشره بعد اعلان تاع الرئيس رئيس سابق على الترشح للعهده الخامسه مباشره دخلت يعني نوجد في فيديو اللي طلقتها هي اللي سميتها نو يو كانت هي شغل هذه كانت نتيجه حتميه للمواقف اللي اتخذتها سابقا.
ماذا بينا ترجع المفتاح وتروبوزي وترتاح. اون بليس 5 عهدات في الديمقراطيه ما جابش عليها المداح. نورمالمون مش
على كل حال انا شخصيا نشوف باللي الدور تاعي ما نقدرش نقول لك انا في الحراك، انا على كل حال العمل الكبير اللي قمنا به سيتي بالك ترجع 4 سنين للور. البداية تاعي كانت في سنة 2011 كانت هذاك وين بدا اليوتيوب والفيسبوك في الجزائر.
السلام عليكم ناس الفيسبوك، معكم انس دينا في البريمي بودكاست تاعي.
دونك انا حطيت لا فيديو الاولانيه حطيتها قصرة هكذا برك ما كنتش ناوي باللي راح يشوفوها بزاف ناس، مي كانوا كاينين كيما نقولوا دي رياكسيون تاع الناس اترافير لي كومونتير ولي ميساج اللي شجعوني باش نزيد ندير فيديو واحد اخرى. ومن بعد شغل درجه بدرجه كل عام وكان العمل اللي يكون عنده تاثير كبير حتى لحقنا مؤخرا كيما العمل تاع راني زعفان.
راني زعفان وليدي في السبيطار يموت وانا نتفرج وانتم لا قريب داويوها في الخارج.
وبصح في الحقيقه شغل حنا خدمناها بامكانيات بسيطه، من الكلمات تاعها اللي كانوا واعرين لانه كان عندهم تاثير كبير، لانه بكل بساطه عبروا عن الواقع تاع الشعب الجزائري.
راني زعفان راني زعفان ما فهمتش كيفاش خليتونا روطار وافونسينا غير لاريير بورتو ربي عطانا الصحاري الجبال والبحار.
دخلت على الميليو هذا باسكو حبيت نوصل نكون وحده من الشعب هذا تاع بلادي ونوصل واش الناس ما تقدرش توصله على خاطر تو سامبلومون ما عندهمش قاعده جماهيريه ولا ما عندهمش وين يعبروا على ارائهم على معاناتهم على واش يحبوا. La première vidéo, c'est le premier clip les دار شويه حس عند الناس c'était Ananish. C'est une chanson justement qui parle de ولاد les quelqu'un. Voilà donc على ولاد اللي عندهم دراهم، على ولاد المسؤولين كيفاش à 17 ans يكون عندهم une voiture sans même passer le permis de conduire. ويدخل بها في الغاشي وما يصرى له والو باسكو باباه avec un petit coup de téléphone il règle tout ce qu'il y a à régler. Coup de téléphone, coup je suis réglé, c'est la belle vie. Comme à la belle, comme je mâchais pas mes mots, donc je disais les choses comme elles sont. هادشي ما كانش يعجب bien sûr الناس اللي حاكمين مونوبول واللي حاكمين السيستم. J'ai été carrément blacklistée. Justement à cause de mes positions politiques et mon engagement. J'ai vraiment subi une pression énorme, donc pas de scène, pas de chaîne de télé, pas de chaîne de radio, rien du tout. Donc j'avais que YouTube pour m'exprimer et pour باش نحط mes chansons وباش voilà باش نعبر على ce que je sais faire.
اليوتيوب سيتي الموقع اللي فيه كما نقولوا الفضاء الحر الاكبر في الجزائر. بون شخصيا انا عشت اشياء اللي خلاتني نشوف انه الشعب الجزائري ولا تدير ثقه في يوتيوبر اكثر حتى من مسؤولين سياسيين.
لازمش نكونوا متوحدين، لازم دائما متفرقين،
باسكو حنايا تربينا ملي كنا صغار على تلفزيون عمومي اللي ما ينقلش الواقع تاع الشارع الجزائري.
ما ولاتش بلاصه لا قرايه لا فلا سبور، في حومتي برك ندورو نافونسي غير للور، اللي راه في التوعي سي بون دفنتهم في قبور.
في الجزائر اليوتيوب ما تقدر تكومباريه مع حتى قناه تلفزيونيه، لانه بكل بساطه ما كاين حتى قناه ولا جرنان ولا بالك مجتمعين كامل اللي يمدوا لك الفرصه انه مثلا تعرض عمل ويشوفوه 2 ملايين 3 ملايين شخص في يوم واحد. ان شاء الله ربي يقدرنا انه نستغلوا هاد القوه اللي في الحقيقه هذه قوه كبيره ان شاء الله نستغلوها في حاجه تاع خير باش نجوزوا لي ميساج اللي يكونوا في الفائده تاع الشعب.
اخويا نعرفوها تما شغل هكذايا انسان فالاب يحكي واش كاين، يحكي واش راه كاين في البلاد تما باش يزيد يوعي تما ناس اللي ما تعرفش.
دونك حنا توجور نسيو نجوزو ميساج رساله اللي تكون تعبر عن واقع تاع الشعب. من جهه اخرى تلقينا بزاف صعوبات دانييرمون خصوصا يعني مع كامل واش صرا يعني بعد الفيديوهات هذوما اللي كانوا عندهم تاثير سياسي كبير. مثلا فيديو نديرها يكونوا عندها دي رياكسيون من اعلى مسؤولين في البلاد، مثلا من وزراء اللي يعقبوا عليها ولا يهضروا عليها حاجه ماشي مليحه ولا
باسكو يوتيوب بايرا سو مسيو او بروراتا دي كليك دي هذه هو ما يقولهاش، احنا نقولوها.
كاين والزطله لازم العداله مستقله، ما تمشيش بالشكاره والتليفون يا اخي الناس سواسيه، ما لا تجي الشعب والرئيس تحت القانون.
كي كنت نكتب في لي بلاتفورم ولا في فيسبوك ولا في لي بلاتفورم سوسيال كنت نكتب لي زيدي تاوعي وبلي فوالا جيتي با كونطونت دو سكي سباسي، كنت جو ميتي لو دوا على لي شوز اللي كانوا يصراو كاع. تعرف الكم تاع الهجوم اللي كنت نتلقاه من عند الناس اللي هما يكونوا متابعين فورسيمون ليا في سور مي بلاتفورم، يهاجموني ويقولوا لي انت ما تحبيش بلادك وتبغيو تنشروا الغسيل تاعنا. بوندون الحراك بيان سور لي زاتاك هادوك تاع القنوات على بالك حبوا يغلقوا لي.
دعوه مخلطه حالتهم راها ما تعجبش، الغيطه مغيطه الكليكه عندنا ما تحشم.
J'avais des amis journalistes et tout, معارف comme ça, ils me disent Raja, on t'adore, personnellement, t'es quelqu'un de bien et tout, mais la غالب داروا لنا une note, les chansons تاعك ما يجوزوش.
الحاله مخلطه ويقول لي خديك من البوليتيك، توكسيك راها توكسيك، تتنحوا كاع افيك من ريفولوسيون باسيفيك.
Moi je mets pas de gants. انا ما عنديش نص ما عنديش soit je dis les choses soit نسكت. Donc voilà, donc le prix je l'ai payé, mais مانيش ندم عليه، مانيش si c'est à refaire نعاودلو jusqu'à la fin.
انا كنت دائما كي نخرج دوكا للشارع ونتلاقى بالناس كانوا دائما يقولوا لنا كي نشوفوا هذه الحاجه يبقى عندنا اسبوار باللي يجي نهار وتتبدل الحاجه، تتبدل البلاد هذه كامل. وحنا دوكا بور لو مومون ان شاء الله هذه الحاجه اللي نتمناوها على كل حال. وحتى الجيل الجديد تاع اليوتيوبر راني نشوف باللي كاينه يخدموا كاليتي مليحه. بوتيتر حنا كنا الاولانيين وفتحنا البيبان لانه كان من الصعب جدا. الحمد لله الناس تقبلت هذا الشيء هذا، بالعكس انا كانوا كاينين تشجيعات كبيره في لي ديبي. بعد مع الوقت بعد ابري 3 سنين 4 سنين ولاو كاينين بزاف اللي دخلوا هذا الدومان هذا. بين قوسين سمونا في مواقع التواصل الاجتماعي اليوتيوبر، سمونا كامل نقولوا صوت الشعب. حنا الحاجه هذه اللي ان شاء الله نخدموا عليها.
Finally, it's been more than a year and a half now since the New York Times broke the Harvey Weinstein story, and the Me Too movement continues to make waves well beyond Hollywood. 2 months ago, a Belgian singer named Angèle released a song called Balance ton quoi, or Expose Your What. It's a play on words on Balance ton porc, the French incarnation of Me Too. The song features women of all ages and varied backgrounds and their stories of sexual harassment and gender discrimination. However, one group is notable in its absence: Muslim women. And that did not go unnoticed by 3 Belgian YouTubers, the Molem sisters, who tweaked Angèle's lyrics to make the song their own, highlighting the Islamophobia and the harassment faced by women purely because of their religious dress, not the kind of discrimination that often makes the headlines. We'll leave you now with some of that video, and we'll see you next time here at The Listening Post.
Dans les innombrables banlieues françaises où de nombreuses jeunes filles sont voilées, c'est également l'islam. C'est également du djihad. Du djihad.
Ils parlent tous comme de vrais experts de tous les voiles, ça parle mal. 2019, je sais pas ce qu'il te faut, mais je suis plus qu'un animal. On dit que les débats sont à la mode et qu'ils marchent mieux quand ils font mal. Ben faudrait peut-être casser les codes, une fille qui se voile, ce serait normal. Balance ton quoi, jour peut-être ça changera. À trop vouloir me sauver, tu finis par m'oppresser. Ouais, c'est mon choix. Ouais, c'est mon choix. Laisse-moi te chanter. Tu pourrais la faire. Moi, je passerai par la télé. Mon voile n'est pas très apprécié. Les gens me disent à demi-mot, pour une voilée t'es pas si bête, pour une voilée t'es pas si laide, tes parents et ton frère t'astreignent. Oh, tu parles de moi, c'est quoi ton problème? J'ai écrit que pour toi le plus beau des poèmes. Laisse-moi te chanter.